Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today we're going to talk about Julius Randle being out for the year, the crazy clouded Western Conference playoff picture, a little bit about Bronny James declaring for the 2024 NBA draft, as well as entering the transfer portal. Finally, we're going to do Nets, Raptors, and Hornets offseason previews. Let's get off and running.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce Simon is here with me. What's going on, Bryce?
What's up, Sam? Hey, I'm just taking a couple-day victory lap over Malachi Flynn's 50-point performance for the Detroit Pistons. Whenever the trade happened, I said, hey, don't forget about this guy. Like, he's not a bad NBA player. He dropped 50 the other night, and I get to take a victory lap for a couple days. So I don't often do that, but I took advantage on this one.
I'm into you taking a victory lap over Malachi Flynn. I've always kind of liked Malachi. I had like a late first-round grade on him. I'm glad he got his moment in the sun to get his 50. I hope that this gives, another team an idea of giving him a chance at the very least, right? Maybe, hopefully signing him in the offseason. Maybe it's Detroit that signs him. You never know, right? But I think that there is talent there, and I like that he plays hard all the time. Like, I think that there's something there, at least in terms of talent.
I'll just say that, like, I've always been a fan. The first summer league I went to, like, he was the first player, me and my friend, like, this was before I was doing any big meet, whatever. We're like, he's way too good to be here. Like, you could just see the talent. Yeah. I will say that game the other night, I rewatched it and I was like, it wasn't like he was just chucking, Sam. Like, he was like, the process was good. He was scoring from all three levels. He got to the free throw line. What I've always loved about Malachi was he plays hard defensively. He makes the little rotations and all of these little intricate things. I hope a team gives him a chance because I think he's an NBA player. I know people will point to efficiency, and yes, he has to make shots better than what he has for the majority of his career. I think the dude can play. Is he going to score 50 points every night? No, but I think he can play, and I think he should be on an NBA team absolutely next season and future seasons.
Yeah, I think he is Look, I don't know if he's going to be an NBA player or not yet, but I think it's worth taking the shot that he is, right? Like, I want to see more, and I think that this 50-point game probably earned him another opportunity at the very least.
Or at least eyeballs, right? Like, teams are going to pay attention to this, and maybe it gets them to go rewatch the film, watch the film a little closer, something, and sometimes that's all a guy needs. And then, to his credit, here's the biggest thing. He's taking advantage of his opportunity in Detroit. He's got an opportunity because of injuries and some things. And I love guys that take advantage of opportunities. Malachi Flynn is doing that right now.
Yeah, I think that is a great call. So one guy, unfortunately, that won't be able to take advantage of an opportunity this year is Julius Randle. So Julius Randle has been dealing with this shoulder injury for quite a while now. And if you remember, there was a conversation early on about whether or not he should get surgery, whether he shouldn't. He opted not to in order to try and return to play. Ultimately, it feels like it's not going to happen. They have declared him out for the season at this point. I do believe he is now finally going to have that surgery on his shoulder. Look, I've seen some people like question in the media, like, oh, well, maybe you should have had the surgery earlier. Maybe you'd be back by now. That's just not how these surgeries work. Like, if he would have had the surgery then, he would have been out for the year. That's the reality. So anybody like blaming, the Knicks medical department or Julius Randle himself, I think that's just like completely, insane to do and not the reality of what's happening here. So the question now is, how does this impact the Knicks for a playoff run? Obviously still trying to figure out, the OG Anunoby situation, let's say, in terms of what that will look like in the playoffs. How do you feel about them now moving forward?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I heard on a podcast earlier today, like, Randle is going to be pushing being ready for the start of next season. So I wonder if this was kind of like the break of, hey, we'll try to get you back. It's not really going, but if we want you healthy for the start of next season, let's go ahead and get this surgery. And that kind of gives you an idea of how long this will take to come back from the surgery. So listen, here's what stinks, Sam, is, and I want to give the Celtics some flowers at some point in this conversation as we're talking Eastern Conference. And I looked up some stats on kind of their regular season dominance. But I thought the Knicks were going to compete in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Like maybe not with the Celtics, but I mean, I like that. And nothing has gone great since the Randle injury, the OG injury. Listen, that Pistons Knicks trade has like proven to be a complete wash and nothing for both teams at this point. Burks is barely playing. Boyan can't make shots anymore. The Pistons, I mean, Malachi came in that trade, so I guess there's the 50-point performance. Fournier can't even make shots in his minutes, and Grimes played 6 games. Like that whole trade ended up being nothing, at least for this portion of the season. So listen, I love what Dante's doing, Sam. You know, Mitchell Robinson, we talk about Isaiah Hartenstein all the time. Josh Hart's like putting up triple doubles and playing 40. Deuce McBride, like, are you kidding me? Talk about taking advantage of your opportunities.
100%.
I mean, what's the cap on a team without Randle and maybe not even OG or a healthy OG? Like maybe they make a crazy run to the conference finals, maybe, but it's probably like they're in first round jeopardy and definitely in the semis. I doubt they're favored at this point.
Yeah, I mean, how a first round series with Orlando looks is quite intriguing to me. The good news is that they do have, you know, all of the minutes of rim protection available to them now, which is important. Isaiah Hartenstein, I think, did a really great job when Mitchell Robinson was out, continues to do a really good job. Mitchell Robinson back now. Like that's really, really important. And I think that especially when you're playing an Orlando team that, you know, at least in theory, right? You know, we don't know what that final matchup in the 4-5 is going to be quite yet, but it seems like it's probably going to be Orlando and New York as long as things kind of break right here. The good news is that if you can shut off the interior, I think it's really hard for Orlando to score because Paulo isn't quite there yet in terms of being like a high level 3-point shooter. Franz goes through stretches where he struggles to knock down 3-pointers, right? So I do think that they can get through an Orlando series. I mean, like, let's start there. Like, if they do play Orlando, how do you feel about that series?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would bet on Brunson, the way DiVincenzo shot the ball, the way they can protect the rim. Like, I would probably pick the Knicks in that situation. And listen, I'm someone that sits here and I love Paulo, Franz, and Suggs. We talked about like where we have those three in terms of the young core in the NBA. If you haven't watched that episode, go check it out. But I think just based on experience and kind of what I think would happen there, I would probably pick the Knicks. The one that would be fun is if they got the Cavs again after what they did to the Cavs last year. And then you get that in the first round again. And what if the Cavs lose to the injured Knicks? Here's the other thing. If they get OG back and healthy, I mean, that changes the equation quite a bit as well. Like now I'm definitely picking them in a first round against Orlando. And then, I mean, if they're the 4-5, they got to go against the Celtics. I'm not picking them against the Celtics in the conference semi. I feel like I'm just not doing that, but they at least get through the first round for sure.
A Cavs matchup is really interesting. Do you it's a good question. Like on one hand, I feel like Orlando matches up better with New York when it's Orlando's defense, New York's offense,
that would be
versus the Cavs on offense,
yeah,
right? Because they can throw Jalen Suggs on Jalen Brunson and like really try to make his life miserable for a long portion of the proceedings, right?
Yeah. Yep.
On the other hand, you have the Cavs who don't really have that like primary like killer on the perimeter. Yeah. Like you're going to throw Okoro on him for portions of it, I would think, and try to make that work. But then on the other side of it, I kind of think that the Knicks defense matches up a little bit better with Orlando's offense than it does Cleveland's offense. So I don't really know which one I would rather play, I guess, if I was New York. I think that they can beat both of those teams, actually, even without Randle. The key is Anunoby. Like, we still don't really have like a great indication on what that looks like yet, right? Like I think that even like, it feels like a couple weeks ago, I think that like Woj said that there was no timetable really. And I mean, he is a guy that throughout the portion of his career that we've seen to this point, it does take him a little bit longer, it feels like, to get back from injuries. So I don't know what to think yet on Anunoby. I hope he's healthy, but like, can we count on that? I don't know.
Here's my question. I thought about this like last night as we were prepping this and we've seen all of these teams healthy at some point, right? Like we've seen the Sixers healthy at some point. We've seen the Knicks fully healthy for a little bit. All these teams have gone through injuries. Where would the Knicks be if we played NBA 2K and put the injury sliders on 0? Like Celtics are probably still the best team in the East. Where would a fully healthy Knicks team be if every other team was healthy as well, right? Because like right now, the Sixers are still in the 8th spot, but man, like Embiid looked really healthy in that Heat game on Thursday night. Like, are they better than the Bucks? Are they better than the Sixers? Like, where do they fall in line if every team is healthy, this Knicks team?
I mean, look, when we talked about this at the trade deadline, we said we thought that they would beat the Bucks in a playoff series.
Because we thought Randle was coming back. We thought all of these guys were going to come back.
I don't know. I mean, look, like we haven't seen the best of the Bucks yet, right? Like they have not looked great. I think I would take them second. Like it'd be either them or Miami. I think that I would trust most. And I think it would probably be them. Like I think I would have them second in the East if they were fully healthy.
That's what stinks for this team is like, and you can't blame it on anything other than bad luck because of the injuries. Like the front office has still done a lot of good things. And like, even like I was making fun of that trade. I think most people thought that was a good trade with the Pistons to bring in Bojan and Burks. And here's the thing. It may still end up being like if Bojan is able to kind of figure things out, they could really use his scoring and what he's able to do even on ball at times to take a little bit of pressure off Brunson at times in the playoffs. The Bucks are fascinating to me, Sam, because it's like, I know we can nitpick, and maybe we're just nitpicking because we all thought this was just going to be an unbelievable marriage offensively between these two guys. And then the coaching change and what is Middleton? What is he not? Like, can they guard anybody on the perimeter? All of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, what happens in the next couple months is all that matters though. Like we will forget about the regular season if this team makes a run to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if they knock off the Celtics, nobody will give two hoots whether Damian Lillard was efficient in the regular season or how many pick and rolls him and Giannis ran or whatever. If they figure it out in the playoffs, then none of it matters. But if they don't, man, that's going to be fascinating.
So like, real question here, just in terms of like the way that they would schematically match up with Cleveland, right? Let's say that you feel like you really need like that second creator out there. You feel like you need Bojan out there, right? Yeah. Do you feel comfortable putting him on Evan Mobley?
I think if I was going to put him on somebody, it would probably be Mobley. Because if Bojan is going to hold up defensively, I think it's going to be like his strength, right? Like just his size. And even on Strus, I think he's going to struggle to chase Strus around and stay in front of him.
And what that does as well is if you're trying to chase the Mobley matchup in terms of getting switches, right? Like if you're going to run on balls to try and get Bojan matched up onto one of Garland or Mitchell, you're then kind of going away from what I think is their best set, which is Allen screening for one of those guys.
Sure. Yep.
So you're kind of taking that piece of it away a little bit.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I think that, look, they're better with Julius Randle, undeniably. Like, Julius Randle is really important for their offense. I do think that they can still cause some issues for the Cavs to where, like, the coaching mismatch there, I think, is, like, a real factor. And I wonder if they would be able, like, I think that's a tight series. I actually do. And it's like the name we haven't mentioned enough yet is Jalen Brunson, right? Like Jalen Brunson's going to be an all-NBA player this year, has been absolutely fantastic. He's averaging like 27 points a game and has been great. Again, the Cavs like don't have like a great option against him. Like it's okay, we're going to, in ball screen scenarios, we're going to hope that we can switch Mobley onto him. But then like, you can't really do that because you're not going to have Mobley run at him. all that often in screens. They're going to run Allen at him and try to pull Allen away from the rim and thus then be able to attack the glass, kind of like they did last playoffs. Like, they really caused problems for Jared Allen. Like, that two-headed monster in the middle with Mitchell Robinson, especially being back, that still causes problems for Cleveland. Like, that problem isn't changing. So
if they want to blitz Brunson, I'm putting Hartenstein on the floor. I'm throwing the ball to him and I'm letting him make out of the short roll. Like from, you know, like I'm gonna let him catch. And then I got DiVincenzo shooting 53s a game over here and making them at a great rate. I got Deuce McBride, who all of a sudden is a knockdown shooter. And, you know, and Josh Hart's going to crash the offensive boards if something is missed, you know what I mean? Like one of the best guard rebounders in the NBA. Or I got Boyan also spacing the floor. So that's what I would do. And here's the thing. Hartenstein's still going to hold up on the defensive end and give you some rim protection. And, you know, I know he can't play. They seem somewhat limit his minutes, but then in the non-minutes, it's Mitch, you know, like, so it's crazy. I think it's a testament. And the Cavs should get some love for how they built out their roster this year as well. They've battled injuries and still won a lot of games, getting production from Sam Merrill and some of those guys. Dean Wade's had his moments, but the Knicks have built out this roster so well, Sam, that even with the injuries, even with Boyan and Burks not contributing the way many thought, like they're still getting major contributions and winning games. And you're right. Like Jalen Brunson should get a ton of love for how awesome he has been. That's still going to be fascinating to me is, I assume he ends up on all NBA second team, but I wonder how close he ends up into that fifth spot. It may not be as close as what I think. Maybe it's a landslide. The top five probably ends up being, but I think he should be one of the top guys on second team.
I think he's one of the top guys on the second team. Like, I think that first team is Luka, Shea, Jokic, Giannis.
Tatum.
Yeah, probably. You probably have to put Tatum on first team, given how good Boston's been.
I
don't know. Like, I go back and forth on that. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Kawhi is better at basketball than Jason Tatum. So, like, I struggle with that piece of it, like picking one or the other. But regardless, like, I would take both of those guys over Brunson. So, like, it's hard to put one over the other. Like,
okay,
it's hard to put in one there.
Kawhi has the games. I was like, man, is Kawhi getting? But he already has 68.
Yeah,
so he
has 68 games played. Like, he's set.
And yeah, so that's what. Okay, can I ask you one real quick thing on the Celtics? I have a trivia for you.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So the last 30 years, how many teams, both conferences, have won their conference by 10 games or more at the end of the season? 30 seasons. 30 seasons. I only went back to 94.
I feel like
this was via Land of Basketball. So if anybody wants to check me or say I'm wrong, that's where I got this stuff from. So
I feel like a couple of the Cavs teams did it.
So no Cavs teams, actually.
No. Okay. No, I don't.
Do you want to throw out a number? Like, you don't even have to name the teams.
4?
I just want 5. So 14,
Okay.
15 Warriors.
Yep.
Won the championship. 12-13 Heat. 2012-2013 Heat. NBA champs. 08-09 Lakers. NBA champs. 95-96 Bulls, the 72-10 team champs. And then the 05-06 Pistons did it. This was 2 years after the NBA championship team. Was actually their best regular season record by 10 games of those 3 seasons. That was the only of these 5 teams not to win the NBA championship. So
and to go back to the Cavs, I believe that's the LeBron conference semifinals where he went nuclear and announced himself as, if not the best player in the league, one of the best players in the league, right?
So they actually, I have it down as they lost to the Heat that year to Shaq and Wade.
Okay, so it was the next year that LeBron went nuclear then.
But
interesting. But regardless.
And right now the Celtics are 13 games up. Again, by my numbers, the biggest lead any of these teams had was 12. So they could, in the last 30 years, now I don't know what the Celtics are going to do down the stretch. I know Brown has a hand thing and they have literally nothing to play for. I believe they even have the overall best record in the NBA locked up. So maybe they don't extend it, but I just wondered the historical context of their regular season dominance in the Eastern Conference. And it's substantial.
I like that you pulled this because We haven't talked enough about Boston. I do want to talk about Boston, guys. I swear at some point we're going to. That will probably be next week, if you made me bet. At some point, probably early this coming week, I'll do awards as well, and we'll talk through all of that. But maybe the Sunday pod that we do, maybe Monday, depending on how I go getting to Portland from. By the way, I'm in Phoenix right now, for people who don't know. That's why the background is different. That's why the microphone sounds a bit funky. I have like a travel microphone, and I'm in a hotel right now. But yeah, maybe we'll do Boston on Sunday, Monday, and kind of dive into that, because that's interesting.
In fairness to Boston, we should be talking about them a lot over the next.
That's the thing.
Months,
that's
right?
why I want to talk about it.
Yeah, they should have a deep run here. And if they don't, then there's definitely going to be something to talk about. So,
yeah, there will be something to talk about if they screw this up somehow, and I will have some real questions on how they did it, how they were not able to get this done.
Yes.
Okay, next up, let's talk about this crazy West convoluted playoff picture, which feels even more and more convoluted by day. You have nothing else on the Knicks at this point, right?
No.
Like, we still feel like they're competitive. They're not as competitive as they would have been with Randle. I don't think the Randle injury changes anything in terms of their offseason. We'll talk about that if and when they get eliminated. But the thing that they have to figure out is OG Anunoby at this point. And, look, there are reports that like he, might come back as soon as, the next couple of games, right? It's just, we don't know what it looks like. We don't know how long he's going to be able to play for. Like, we don't know what the minutes are. Like, there are just a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
Okay. The Western Conference now. So there are, I would argue, 3 separate races, maybe 2 separate races.
Yeah.
But there's a third one that I think is a little bit interesting that are happening all at once. Apologies to the Houston Rockets. They are gone from this playoff picture, unfortunately. They're not mathematically eliminated, but they're down 4 games with 6 to go against the Golden State Warriors after the loss to the Warriors last night.
And don't have the tiebreaker. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure the Warriors, because it's like 4 games, but really it's 5 because the Warriors would win the tiebreaker. So it's going to happen in the next couple days.
Yeah, it's donezo at this point for the Rockets, unfortunately. Really fun story in March. Really enjoyed them. We talked a lot about how the schedule was very kind to Houston throughout the portion of March. Rockets fans, unfortunately, did not love that we talked about that. And then when the schedule heated up, they played really well against Minnesota. I thought that was competitive. It's just that the Warriors game didn't feel particularly competitive to me. And then what was the game they played before Minnesota that I watched? It was the Mavericks. That game, they just had no plan for how to deal with Jalen Brunson, or Jalen Green blitzes. When the Mavs just put 2 on the ball, it just felt like a real problem. And that's a great example of being able to point to Alperen Şengün would have been really helpful in that circumstance when Jalen was getting blitzed. Okay. The first kind of preview the first kind of thing that I want to talk about here in these races is the race for number 1.
Sure.
Minnesota, as of the time of this recording, is currently in first place at 53-23. They're in first place by nature of being ahead in the loss column. Denver is 53-24. Oklahoma City is 52-24. As it stands, looking through the schedules that they have left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where is my schedule that I tried to grab? I know I grabbed it. Okay. Minnesota has the 11th toughest schedule left. They have 2 games against the Wizards and Hawks. They have 2 games against Phoenix, and they have 1 game against Denver and the Lakers. So not, ideal necessarily.
Yep.
Oklahoma City has 2 games against the Spurs and the Hornets. And then they have a game against the Pacers, the Kings, the Mavericks, and the Bucks. I think that's like fairly favorable.
Yep.
If I'm being completely honest. And then the last team here is Denver. Denver has Minnesota left. And then San Antonio, Memphis, Utah, and the Hawks. I think that we're going to a level where it seems like Denver should be in the best position here to get the 1 seed. But these teams are all really good, and any of them I think could sweep this run. Like they're going for first place in the Western Conference for a reason. All of these teams are great.
Yeah, I mean, as you went through those, I had the Timberwolves, was that 3, 4? Yeah, like 3-3 was kind of off the top of my head. Even if they, what did I have? Maybe 4-2. Lose 1 to the Nuggets and at least 1 to the Suns. So maybe 4-2. Oklahoma City, I said 4-2. I did look up the injury report as we're recording. Like SGA is not playing at least until the 9th. So I believe that means he's going to miss 2 more games. J-Dub's not going to play tonight as we record. That's all it says against the Pacers. So that's like, I think I had like maybe 4-2 for the Thunder as you were talking through those, but I probably was counting the Pacers as a win, like without both of those guys on Friday night, who knows? And then I had the Nuggets 5-0. Like, I feel like if the Nuggets really want this, they can kind of gear up and go for it for these final 5 games. I know Jamal Murray hasn't been playing. Let me check his status real quick here for the Denver Nuggets. He is out for Saturday's game. He's listed as questionable, for the Saturday game versus the Hawks. But I still feel like with that schedule, they could go 5-0 to close it out.
I think I would pick Denver to be the number 1 seed in the West as of right now. Do you think that there is any advantage that could be held here in any way by not getting the 1 or the 2 seed and thus moving down to the 3rd seed and potentially having to play one of likely, let's say, Phoenix or the Pelicans, as opposed to like, let's say that like the Lakers and the Warriors like move into that 7 and 8 realm. The Lakers are like a really good team that like I feel like a lot of teams don't really want to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Is there any gamesmanship there? I think Denver doesn't really care at the end of the day. I think as long as they're at home, they're probably just good with whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Lakers are the team in that play-in right now that, like, if I'm the Thunder, would make me a little bit nervous because they can just go big and try to bully me. And we've talked about the rebounding. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of experience there with, LeBron and AD, but even other guys on that team that have made a run through the playoffs, as early as last year. So that would be a team. That's the only team that I would be like, man, if I could jockey for position, I would maybe rather play, let's say the Pelicans were the 6 and the Lakers were going to come out as the 7. I would rather be the 3 than the 2. And that's because like, I think Zion had a finger or a thumb or something just the other night as well. I mean, it seemed like the news was all about injury stuff. Yeah. He's listed as questionable for tonight. So, and Ingram hasn't played for a little while. So just based on health and some of that, maybe I would rather, play the Lakers than the Pelicans. I don't know that I'm signing up for the Suns, Sam. Am I crazy? Like there's something about those 3 and how talented they are. And Booker's been locked in. And I don't know that I want to sign up for that unless, I don't know. They still make me a little bit nervous if I'm a team.
Yeah, they still make me a little bit nervous too. And the problem is that these teams are all so close, right? And we're about to transition into talking about that situation as well. If you try to play like the gamesmanship angle, like the Lakers are a game and a half out behind Phoenix for the 6th seed right now.
Yep.
And again, like if you look at the schedule, Phoenix has the hardest schedule remaining in the NBA. Yep. They have Minnesota twice, they have the Clippers twice, they have the Pelicans, and they have the Kings. Like that could easily be a 4-2 run because they're really talented and could be like they could figure it out, or it could be like a 1-5 run if they like really struggle here. So I am intrigued by all of this. It's just that I think the Nuggets are going to feel like they can beat whoever. Like the Lakers are the team you want to avoid. We just swept them in the playoffs last year. If we have home court, we're good. I don't know if I feel like Minnesota or Oklahoma City might try and avoid anybody. I just don't think that you can, is kind of where I'm at on it, given how tight this whole race is.
Do you think Oklahoma City is the team that could benefit the most from home court advantage because of the youth? Do you think home court matters that much in the NBA in terms of that? Like I know with Denver, you have the elevation and stuff like that. Oklahoma City, I'll be honest, like I haven't been to a game there since I was in college, which was a long time ago. But like it seems like the crowd is really good. I assume people would be crazy. Like just a young team that gets to play at home. So if you're the 2 seed, like 2 or 3 doesn't matter for the first round, but then if you're going into the conference semis, then you at least get home court in that as well. And then obviously the 1 seed gets it all the way through to me. Oklahoma City is the team is like, I feel like maybe home court could feel a little bit better for them. I was going to look at home road. Even home road splits are pretty even across the board for those 3 teams. So
yeah, look, I feel like Denver is probably the team where it helps the most just because of the elevation angle. Like that's just a real factor at the end of the day. They are awesome at home.
But don't you trust them on the road the most? Like, I guess
I do, but
just because of their experience.
I do 100%. I do. Like Oklahoma City, I'm sure would love to have home court advantage. I think they would probably like to at least get the 2 if they can, but you know, again, like they're in a tight race with Minnesota, right? Like the good news is that, you know, their schedule is manageable. At least it's not great, but like Oklahoma City, if they can get Shea back and if they can, like stealing this game against the Pacers would be really critical.
Yes.
And we'll find out if that's going to happen, but yeah, I don't know. It feels tricky. Let's go to this middle picture now, right?
This is crazy. Yeah.
And I guess that like it kind of involves all of the teams. So like maybe we'll now say that this is like a 2 thing. I feel pretty okay. Actually, the Clippers are going to end up in the 4-5.
I think, yeah.
We know that. Like,
I agree. I think so.
They are 4 games behind Oklahoma City. They are 2 games up on Denver, or 2 games up on Dallas, who is the 5. And they are 3 games up on Phoenix, who is the 6. The Clippers, you know, have a where are the Clippers here?
12th
schedule.
They get 2 games against the Jazz. That should be 2 guaranteed wins the way the Jazz are doing things right now.
Yeah, and if they get this win against the Rockets as well, which they have, that gets them to 3, and that basically locks up the 4-5.
Yep.
Dallas is currently 46-30. Phoenix is 45-31. The Pelicans are 45-31. Sacramento is 44-32. The Lakers are 44-33. So the Lakers are 3 games back of Dallas right now in the loss column. I think that moves the Lakers out of being able to get to the 5.
Yep.
Let's say.
Sure. I think that's fair.
But Phoenix, and I would say the Pelicans, and maybe Sacramento to an extent, but probably those 2, I think have a chance to be able to move up to the 5.
Yeah.
Would you rather play the Clippers or, let's say, Oklahoma City in a playoff series?
Is Kawhi healthy?
Yes, let's say.
I mean, I feel like the answer has to be Oklahoma City, and I hate saying it because I love that team so much, but if I'm the Mavs or whoever, I just feel like I'm going to be able to go in and I will take the young team that hasn't been here before. And I know it's cliche and I know people are screaming at me right now about how good they are. And my answer is go watch all the love we've given these guys. Like I believe in them fully, but if you made me choose, I feel like that's probably the right answer if they're healthy. Now, I'm not sure Kawhi is going to be healthy. So if you just told me I had to choose right now, not knowing one way or the other, I would choose the Clippers and assume Kawhi is not going to be healthy because that just kind of always happens.
Yeah, I think I probably would rather play the Clippers just because of the Kawhi health mark, which at least throws there, right?
Yes.
Next, who is the team you are most worried about in this group? Who do you think is the most dangerous team in this group?
The most dangerous, like the team I think can make a run?
Yes.
The Dallas Mavericks. Like you called this, and listen, I thought you were crazy. I never say this stuff to your face because I really like you and you let me come on the pod. We're friends, right? and I don't like to be. Whenever you told me you went on another pod and said that the Dallas Mavericks were one of your 5, I was like, in my head, I go, Sam, you are crazy. And then the more I think about it, I got asked this question the other day. Like the Nuggets and the Celtics are 1-2. No, like I think it's hard to debate that. And then I start looking at the next teams, and I'm like, who do I really believe in? Do I believe in the Bucks? I can't believe in the Knicks because they're hurt. Like even the Sixers are like the way Embiid looks. I'm like, dang, maybe I should just believe in the Sixers. On this side of it, we just talked about the Clippers, the Wolves. We don't know in the playoffs. The Thunder are young. The Suns, maybe. Like the Mavericks make a lot of sense, man. Like that was a good call. That was a good call because Luka's insane. Kyrie's had quietly somehow a really, really good year. And if PJ Washington makes shots, they have rim protectors, they have versatility. We've talked a lot about this team. I mean, if you told me they lost in the first round, I wouldn't be shocked. But if you tell me they make a run to the conference finals, I definitely won't be shocked by that either.
That is absolutely that's absolutely right. I think that they are really dangerous. My only worry for them is that they end up like locked in a matchup with Denver at some point. I think Denver like causes them enormous problems. But yeah, like I think that, I mean, like it's a real question. Like, would you take them or Oklahoma City right now? I would take them. I would. Like, I think they're just more, I think they are more versatile in terms of the matchups that they can deploy against you. And while I love the idea of, okay, we can throw Lou Dort on Luka, we can throw J-Dub on Kyrie, and then we can like still let Shea be able to play that like free safety zone kind of thing, right? I still think it's going to be really, really hard to deal with Luka in that matchup.
I mean, I go back to something I say a lot. Like, I think in a playoff series, Luka's the best player in that series. So at the end of the day, like I give them the, like, and I love SGA. Like, I so hope that the Oklahoma City Thunder just prove me wrong. And as this young up and coming team with a really good coach and a well-built roster and a plethora of assets to build it out even further, I hope they just completely change my thoughts on winning in the playoffs and a young team being able to do it. And they just make a run all the way. I hope they do. I just can't sit here and say that. Like, I can't say it because I have to kind of believe in what I believe in. And that's that you have to go through some growing pains to do it first. And so because of that, like it's really close, but Luka has been incredible. Like he's had an MVP caliber season that we haven't talked enough about because Jokic is crazy and SGA has been crazy. The other, like even Giannis isn't getting enough credit, quite honestly, for what he's done this year. Luka has been, I think people may be surprised if he may end up 2 on the MVP stuff. Like, I wonder if when it's all said and done, I think that's going to be closer than what people think between him and SGA.
It's really close. My guess is, God, it's somewhere between Luka and SGA for 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I haven't made that call yet. Like, I just really can't. Like, I haven't made that call yet. At some point, we'll talk about it. Like, probably next week, maybe next Thursday, we'll do awards races and everything. But, yeah, we'll talk about it then. Because those two are really close. And it's a testament to both of them that they've been that incredible throughout the season. Like, off the cuff, my immediate reaction is Luka at 2, but I don't feel great about it, and I want to do more research.
Yeah.
Luka's been fantastic and unbelievable this season, and I certainly look, I think you have to say Jokic for MVP. I do. I think he's the best player in the league.
I think that's where it's at now. Yep.
Yeah, he's just so dominant in so many ways. But at the end of the day, I think I would probably have Luka at 2 right now. I want to do more research though.
Yeah.
I need to Aaron Rodgers this and do my own research. Okay. Next up here is kind of talking about the Pelicans and the Kings, because those are the two teams to me that, like, I thought I had a handle on the Pelicans, right? Like, I thought I had a handle on, okay, this team, they're just going to like ride the really high level defense and it's going to be fine. And they're going to end up in, either the 4-5 or the 3-6 matchup, and it's all good. And then they drop games here to Orlando on Wednesday, Phoenix by 13 on Monday. They lost to Boston last Saturday, like whatever, right? Lost to Oklahoma City in like a fun, like really, really fun game. And that was with like a fully healthy-ish Oklahoma City team, let's say. Shea was playing in that game, but like that was after he kind of hit the hip, if I remember correctly.
Quad or something, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was. The game that like kind of threw me a little bit was like, look, they came out and like absolutely blitzed the Pistons like last week, right? There, you watched that game. They were up like 20 at the end of the first quarter, right?
Yep.
The Pistons just like kind of chipped away to where that was like competitive a little bit at the end. And I was like, why is this competitive?
Yeah, I mean, because that's what the Pistons do. Like, they keep things somewhat competitive with crazy process to get there. I mean, I don't, sometimes those games end up a little closer than what the actual games are, but the Pelicans are weird, man. Like, again, like, I hate to keep going back to the injury report, but I mean, scheduled to be reevaluated later this week. That was on April 2nd via Shams. Like, what is Ingram going to be ready? Like, do we give them a chance at all? I don't think you do if Ingram's not playing. And right now,
I mean, like, here's the really fun question here, right? So Zion is questionable tonight against the Spurs.
Yep.
And I don't know if people have been paying attention, but like the Spurs are the one team like down at the bottom right now that are pretty feisty.
Yeah.
Like they will like actually go and like really push some of these good teams. Like, for instance, New York, right? Like they really, really pushed New York last week. Like they beat New York. They beat Phoenix. They really pushed the Warriors is the game I was thinking of. And they pushed like Denver on Tuesday, right? And they have 3 days off here. And that was like a, fully operational outside of Jamal Murray Denver team, right? Like that's a game they kind of need Zion for, I think, with how Victor is closing the season.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the Spurs, I think, Vassell's out, Sohan's out, Keldon Johnson's out. Like they've shut some of those guys down, at least for tonight. If I think I heard that Vassell and Sohan were both the rest of the season. But yeah, I mean, if the Pelicans are without Zion and BI.
Bryce, I just want to be clear here. The Spurs at home with a starting lineup of Wemby, Julian Champagnie, Chetty Osman, Trey Jones, and Malachi Branham, like really pushed the Warriors on Sunday. Like they really gave them like a hell of a game.
I mean, that speaks to Victor Wembanyama, right? Like I think we all agree. And that's why he topped our list pretty much single-handedly the other day. But yeah, I mean, I think where you were going with this is the Pelicans are already in 7, only a game up on the Kings, game and a half up on the Lakers. Like they could end up in a spot that's not great for them. Like they're already, even in the 7, do they beat the Kings or not? If they don't, then they get the Lakers. I realize, like, I guess I'm giving the Lakers the win over the Warriors. Like, this is a team that we were kind of excited about at one point that is really flirting with not even making this thing at this point. And it could make it, they're in a position it could be even tougher. Like right now, at least they'd get to play at home for those 2 games if necessary. they're not far off from being on the road and just one game and out against a very experienced Warriors team. Obviously, they could climb the other way as well, but these injuries aren't going to help that at all.
So Sacramento is the other team here. They have 6 games left. They have Boston, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, Pelicans. But they do have 2 games against the Blazers and Nets that they should win, right?
Yep.
If they can go 2-2 in the tough games and then take those other 2 games, they're okay.
Yep.
And they probably stay. Really, you want to stay in the 7-8. That's the key.
Yeah.
If you're Sacramento, obviously, you would love to like be able to jump and get into the 6th seed. But and like honestly, given how hard Phoenix's schedule is, like there's a chance of that. And given that the Pelicans are dealing with injuries, there's a chance of that. But like, man, I don't know what it is about this Kings team. I just can't trust them yet. I can't. It's the defense, obviously, but like beyond that, like I can't get there with them. And look, like their league average on defense, like I totally get it. Like I know that their fan base goes crazy when you talk about the defense because people have been like crushing Sabonis all year on defense. He's not a great rim protector, but like he's good positionally. And I think he kind of makes it work on that end for himself. I struggle with it and I don't know what it is.
Well, and he's had an incredible year. Like, as we're talking about first team All NBA, that's not him, but second team All NBA, I'm third team All NBA. It's gonna be interesting with the numbers he's put. The numbers look good with all the double doubles and the triple doubles and all of that. He's had a really good year. The thing is, like defense, right? Question mark. Their offense is taking a hit as well, Sam, because Herter and Malik Monk, there's injuries again pops up with those guys. So I've struggled with them as well in terms of like, just how much do I believe in this? What do I think it looks like? And so I'm just so ready for these. I'm excited for the play-in. The Eastern Conference, that 7-8 will be fun. The Bulls and Hawks. I mean, I guess there's some intrigue there just because it's the Bulls and the Hawks, but this Western Conference one, man, there's going to be some good teams. I mean, Sam, as disappointing as the Warriors are, they're 8 games over 500. 8 games over 500 in 10th. The Lakers are 11 games over 500. Like, we're questioning a little bit the Kings and the Pelicans, 12 and 14 games over 500 for those 2 teams. Like, they're putting together a heck of a regular season, but it's like, how much do you trust them? I'm kind of in the same spot with the Kings. I'm just not sure how much I do.
I think the Monk injury is really important because he got hurt. I believe it was last Friday against Dallas, and they've scored 103 against Dallas. They dropped 127 against Utah, which like worst defense in the league. You would expect like a Sabonis Fox with like any 3 other guys out there team to be able to drop 127 on that team. But then 109 in a win against the Clippers that was really good. And then 109 again against the Knicks. The offense isn't quite humming, kind of like you said, right? So they really need to rely on like whatever they can get defensively from guys like Keon Ellis, who has been really, really valuable recently. Keegan Murray has had like an impressive defensive season, especially compared to where he was like in the first half of his rookie season. I think that they are finding ways to be manageable on the defensive end and to be right around league average. But if they're league average, like offense and league average defense, that's probably not good enough for what this is right now. And that's about what they've been since Monk has been out.
Yeah, that's it. That defensively, okay, I'm cool, right? You're going to give up some points, but then if you can really go offensively and listen, I think Monk's had an incredible year. I kind of just like his game and I've been a fan with what he's been able to do, but they're not going to have him. Like if they're in the play-in, he ain't playing. Like he's not. I think they're probably going to have to get to the second round to get him back. And so they're going to have to find a way. Keon Ellis, Mitchell, whatever. Maybe Visinkoff can come in, make some shots. Keegan's been a little bit up and down with his scoring and his shooting and stuff like that. Maybe that's the thing though. Like they still got the dudes that if you catch them on the wrong night, they can light you up. And then if they have that from those guys and the league average defense, then they're probably going to win a basketball game. So that's what's exciting about all these teams, right? Same thing. Pelicans get healthy, Sam. We see Point Zion with BI and these guys surround, CJ still has good games. They can beat anybody, or any one of these teams.
Yeah, the big games here, it's going to be like kind of the middle 3 games that they have left. At the Thunder on the 9th, which, as you mentioned, like that's currently the target date for Shea, it seems like, at least. At home against the Pelicans, at home against Phoenix. Those are their games next week.
That's huge. Those are huge.
Next week is going to tell the tale of the Sacramento Kings season, and we're going to learn what we have to know about them. But like, and this is kind of what drives me crazy, and I'm really glad Tomas Carnero brought this up in the YouTube comments. They play to their level competition a lot of the time too.
Yeah.
Like, I think that they're probably fine and will beat Brooklyn, but like, yeah, I mean, like road game, Cam Thomas Magic right now. It's, we're going to talk about Cam Thomas in March here momentarily. I mean, the whole thing is nuts. And the team that we haven't gotten to yet is the Lakers. And I think that the Lakers are probably they're the team I would least want to play in the playoffs other than Dallas of this group right now, I think is what I would say.
Yeah, and maybe it's just like recency bias from last year and what we saw them do out of this. I also think it's just like they do have LeBron James and Anthony Davis who are really good at basketball. And, as LeBron's saving just a little bit for the playoffs, Austin Reeves has found his game. We've talked about him. D'Lo has what you're going to get with D'Lo, right? Like there's going to be some decision-making things and some like that. But in general, he's been better since they inserted him back in the starting lineup. And they kind of seem like they've settled in on this starting lineup. And so like, I wouldn't want to see him. Like if I'm Minnesota, if I'm OKC and I end up in the 1 or 2 and I get the Lakers round 1, I'm not crazy excited about that. Of these 4 teams that are in the play-in right now, they're definitely the team I would not want to see at all.
Yeah. I get that. I think a big reason why people are talking about the Lakers a little bit more as a team that's getting hot at the right time.
Sure.
Honestly, frankly, does have to do with the schedule. We talk a lot about schedule on this show. And like when you go through soft stretches in March, you can really rack wins in a hurry, right? So the Lakers, they're on this stretch where I think they've won 8 of 9, right? So they beat the Hawks, they beat the 76ers, they beat the Pacers in like a Fire Fest like shootout. Like it was like, I think they scored 150 in regulation or something crazy. They beat the Bucks on the road, they beat Memphis on the road, lost to the Pacers on the road, and then beat the Nets, Raptors, Wizards on the road. So like, look,
not crazy.
Road wins are road wins, right? But they're not really when it's those last 3 teams with the Nets, Raptors, and Wizards, and like none of those teams are really competitive right now. It feels like the Nets are like frisky, but like the last 2 teams particularly are like on these long, like horrendous losing streaks. It feels like. I feel like we are getting like a little bit of, if I'm going to talk about it with Houston, with the schedule, where I think the schedule made it like a real factor. I'm absolutely going to talk about it with the Lakers. I think that part of why the Lakers are getting this boost right now is that the schedule is really kind of turning in their favor. They have the Cavs, Timberwolves, Warriors in their next 3 games. I'm really interested in those games. Like I think that seeing how they play against those teams will be fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, they have a chance here with on Takeathon, they have the 5th toughest schedule remaining. Their only quote unquote easy opponent is the Grizzlies. They also have a game against the Pelicans in there. And so, yeah, if they really want to either put them in a better position in the play-in to go just have to win 1 game, or again, they could sneak into the 6, probably not the 5, because that's 2.5 games. They have it there in front of them to do so. And so that could show us how real they are. Or if they drop a couple, I don't think they're going to, I guess theoretically the Warriors could catch up to them. Again, they play each other and, the Warriors are a game and a half, but behind. But yeah, go win 4 out of 5 here to finish off the season. And people are really going to feel good about the Lakers, especially if they get out of the play-in, right? End up in a 6 or something like that. People will really be kind of jumping on that bandwagon for them to make another run.
Okay, so given all that we've kind of broken out here, Who ends up in the 5 and the 6?
All right. So the 5 and the 6. I think the Clippers probably end up in the 4.
Yep.
I'm going to end up Mavs at 5. Let's have some fun here. And as much as I kind of like, I don't want to stay status quo. That's no fun, but the Pelicans have their injury stuff. Let's have some fun. Let's say the Lakers make it. Let's say the Lakers jump all the way to 6. Let's say they do it.
Man, they're 2 games back in the loss column right now, which is tricky.
That's a tough schedule for the Suns coming up, though. Toughest schedule.
Really tough for the Suns. They have the tiebreaker against the Suns, I believe, having won 3 of 4 against them this year. But like when we get it, I don't know what happens if we get into like 3-game or 3-team like tiebreaker situations. Like
Yeah,
I just don't like have a feel for that. Man, 2 games is a lot of games.
It is.
2 games back with 6 to go, but they do have the tie break.
I just didn't want to keep it the same. That's no fun to say it because you probably feel like the Mavs stay in 5.
The Mavs, I'm like more like I think that they might like get up to 4.
4.
I think the Mavs end up at the 5 most likely, but like I think they're closer to getting to the 4 than dropping out at 6. If the Pelicans didn't have the injury issues, I would probably just say New Orleans because their schedule is.
I was going to say the Pelicans also. And listen, like Zion's
more
not
manageable.
Like Zion is not out for tonight based off the most recent thing I've seen. He's day to day questionable for the game.
He's questionable for tonight. Yeah.
So he may play tonight. They beat the Spurs and like this is all kind of moot and he's good to go and doesn't miss a game. Like that's definitely possible. But they still don't have BI. It doesn't look like he's not going to hit another regular season game or maybe at the very end. So
I think I'm going to go with the Pelicans.
Okay.
And then the Lakers end up at 7.
That's dropping the Suns even further back then.
I think it's Lakers, Suns in the 7-8. And then Kings, Warriors in the 9-10.
Okay.
Is where I'm at. And I hope that the Kings prove me wrong.
Yep.
I would very much like that. I hope the Kings prove me wrong. Okay, let's talk about Bronny James.
Okay.
Bronny James announced today that he is declaring for the NBA draft and will enter the transfer portal. I do not have Bronny James as a top 100 prospect this year. I also do transfer rankings for The Athletic, and I had Bronny at 73 on my transfer rankings today, along with CJ Moore. I didn't really talk to CJ ahead of that, though, so like, don't come at CJ if you're upset with where he's ranked. That was me. The reason for why he's 73 in the transfer rankings are there are players ahead of him that he's more talented than. But he's young. He is still trying to figure out his game. He's not really a shot creator at this point. His pull-up game is not really there. And he doesn't really get like high-level paint touches, right? I love him on defense. I love him as a passer. I think the shooting talent is better than what he showed this year at USC. Like I think he's,
Sure.
28% from 3 or this year, something like that. I think he'll shoot it better at his next stop if he ends up transferring. But the problem is that, okay, let's say you're a high major team, right? Let's say we're Ohio State, right? Like he visited Ohio State very publicly. He is a player that could actually like help them in a lot of ways. Like they just lost Roddy Gale. And the thing that they really need is like a high-end perimeter defender, right? If you're Ohio State and you go recruit Bronny James, he's not playing on ball. Like you have Bruce Thornton, you have Michi Johnson, right? Like Those 2 guys are going to handle everything you need there. Off the ball, like in terms of everything else, he'd help them defensively. But let's say he doesn't shoot, right? Then he's not helping you at the end of the day, and that's a loss.
Yep.
Let's say he does everything right, makes 40% of his threes, and plays that high level defense you want, he's going. Like he's going to the NBA at that point. So it's either a 1 year like role player in all likelihood situation, unless he transfers down levels, and maybe we'll talk about that. Or it's a this didn't work out situation. So teams will someone will take a shot on it. Like there's one team in particular that we'll talk about that I think is interesting. But like teams will take a shot on it. If I was Ohio State, like I wish Bronny was a little bit bigger. I'd probably be like okay with it if they went and got him. Like I'd probably be excited about it on some level. I think he actually like ticks boxes for them in terms of what they need. But like I'm not like going out of my way and like feeling like this is a must-have either.
Well, I think that's what's fascinating about the portal. I think people probably look at it and just to go, okay, most talented players are at the top. Well, what you bring up there is interesting, you know, like
you're trying to build a program.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. And you're trying to build a roster for a year and you're trying to build a program if you can. Like seriously, we have him below Kerry Booth right now. Kerry Booth is Calvin Booth's son at Notre Dame.
Yep.
You know, big, like kind of shooter who has a real chance to, I think at some point play in the NBA, but probably a bit more of a project. Maybe he goes pro if he has like a really great year next year, but like it would require him to like take a huge leap. With Bronny, it feels like he's going to go if like there's any momentum, right? So that's why we have like somebody like Kerry Booth ahead of Bronny because, you know, I think Kerry Booth's like really talented and, you know, has a chance to be like a really high level college player, maybe play in the NBA, but like B, you might have Kerry Booth for multiple years and it doesn't feel like that's a win there. You might have for multiple positive years as well.
I was going to say, like, think whatever you want about like Hunter Dickinson, but it was essentially like Kansas got 2 years out of Hunter Dickinson. So like he goes into the portal, you pretty much know you're going to get 2 years of him. And then the other one's like Dalton Connect, Tennessee only got 1 year out of him, but Sam, they got like insane production out of 1 year from Dalton Connect, who had played 4 years of college basketball and was older and, you know, already a proven shot maker and all of those things. So like that is fascinating. I hadn't really thought, because I've never had to do transfer portal rankings. Like really, I stay out of that and I just try to track where guys end up. You know, Bronny's interesting, you know, because I'm with you. I don't have him on my big board that I keep track of because quite honestly, I don't consider him to be a 2024 guy. Now he may end up in this draft. We've talked about it. And as people leave, maybe he ends up somewhere in my top 100 as a, you know, I take guys off and then have to filter new guys in. And listen, maybe he gets drafted, you know, whatever. We've talked about this. We think he's good enough over time that we think he can get drafted on merits, whatever. But yeah, I mean, he was 37% from the field. He was 27% from three, 68% from the line, 1.5 attempts a game, just 20 minutes. But like, there's nothing here other than like the assist to turnover ratio is pretty good. The 3-point volume is solid for 20 minutes a game. Like there's some surface level stuff that's really nice. I was talking to someone about this morning and they were talking about how athletic he was. I was like, yeah, but the skill just didn't show. And so that's where I'm at with Bronny in terms of, I think that's where he needs to go. I don't think he should go pro. That's my opinion. He needs to go somewhere where he can improve that skill level and whatever that needs to be in terms of what he needs to show NBA teams. He needs to go somewhere where he can really grow that and develop that in games. And
okay, so yeah, that's kind of the next question I wanted to ask you. And I'm glad you kind of talked about the in games piece of it. So do you think the best plan for Bronny is to go to a higher level of competition, let's say like high major competition, and like battle against guys like day in, day out in the summer and like really improve and do like iron sharpens iron situation, right? Or do you think it would be more valuable for him to go get game time at say like a high mid-major kind of school or like a mid-major kind of school?
I mean, I understand both sides of it. I understand iron sharpen iron, like all that. I think I kind of want to see him in a high usage role. Like I want him to be able to have have the ball in his hands and can you grow and do that stuff and like be the guy and all. And understanding that eventually it scales down. But I mean, I've never seen him in person. 6'4", 6'3" probably whenever like combine measurements come out. Is that probably more fair, 6'3"? Or is you think he's actually 6'4"?
I think he's not 6'4". I think he's probably like 6'2.5".
Okay. So like to me, that projects a little bit more like, hey, you need to be able to play on ball, because I don't think he's going to shoot 50% from three like we've seen from Reed Shepherd or something like that. So what does it, even if you go play on ball, or excuse me, off ball at Ohio State and shoot 38% from three, is that really what's best? Because at some point you're probably going to have to play on ball. If you can play on ball, Sam, and defend, and you're 38% from three, now I'm really intrigued by Bronny James. Like, that's really interesting to me. And
Yeah.
even if it's not at the highest of levels, like, the nice thing for him is everybody's going to track him. Everybody's going to follow him because he is who he is. So
Right.
exposure is not a question.
So one school that has been brought up to me by a few different coaches, and for what it's worth, like, I want to be clear here. Like, I think those coaches are speculating more than like anything else. Right. Like, I don't think that this is like a thing that is, I don't know where this school stands on him, maybe is the way to put it. The school that's been speculated to me as like an interesting option for him is Duquesne.
Oh,
because wow. Drew Joyce
Okay.
just got the head coaching job at Duquesne. You know, Drew Joyce III is known to be like a super close friend of LeBron's, played with LeBron at St. Vincent St. Mary's, right? Like, that's a school that, like, I've had now a few different college coaches kind of speculate to me like, hey, this is kind of like an interesting idea. Maybe this is, you know, a way to go about it. Maybe this would kind of help him get the reps. You would trust your friend in Drew Joyce to, if you're LeBron, to, you know, give him those opportunities on the ball and like give him a real shot at it. Whereas with, you know, some other colleges, you may not have that, you know, trust factor maybe. I think it's an interesting idea, honestly. Like, you played a semi-high level in the A10. Duquesne just made the NCAA tournament this year. Just, you know, won a game in the NCAA tournament, beat Duquesne, right? Or beat BYU. I'm sorry. Not a bad spot, right?
I mean, I think the A10 is about to have a first-round draft pick this year, and Deron Holmes II, who like was, you know, on All-American teams and there's other guys in that league that I've watched throughout the year, right? Like St. Joe's has some dudes. He's transferring out, but you know, George Mason had a dude. You know, like, so there's guys. You know, Richmond was really good, even if there wasn't like draft prospects, but they, you know. So like, it's not like the A10 is impossible. You know, you're not talking some of these conferences where there's just no history of guys coming out of the A10 and going pro and getting looks. And again, you're Bronny James. Duquesne just had a crazy nice run. So the name's fresh on people's mind. It would be great momentum for them. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think he would have issues if he went there and was the player we're talking about and think he needs to be. I don't think he has any issues like getting the exposure and the recognition and all of that he would need. And you can build out a schedule to make sure he gets some of the competition. But I think the A10's held in pretty high regard. I thought the committee held him in pretty high regard with the way they ranked him and seeded him as well. So, and there's good competition there. So
I think that's actually like the best option I've heard so far of everything that I've been kind of like thrown. Because like I've had people like bring up the NBL as like an option, right? I don't think he would ever play on ball in the NBL.
Yeah.
He's not good enough. Like, those teams want to win. Like, the jobs there matter. Like, those teams want to win. I am sure that like the NBL, like the league office, would really try and like push it to where like, hey, we have this great opportunity here. We have Bronny James. Let's get him in the system. But like, if I was LeBron and I was like Clutch and those people, I'm not saying I wouldn't trust the NBL itself. I wouldn't trust like the stakeholders on the specific teams that he plays for or would theoretically play for to, at the end of the day, like prioritize Bronny over winning professional basketball games.
AJ Johnson played 200 regular season minutes this year for Illawarra. Like, he's not going to go there. And listen, I love the NBL. Like, it's been, so everybody needs to get familiar with it. Like, one, because of this draft, and then, but like, I would not think that that's a good decision.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's, look, I love the NBL. Like people know that too. Like, I'm all about that league. I don't think it would be I'm sure that the NBL would love it. I don't think it would be a great fit, if I'm being completely honest. Like if the goal here is to help that kid like get better, I think the NBL would help that kid get better. And like honestly, like he'd be a little bit out of the spotlight to an extent, like just being away from the United States, like that would probably be helpful. But man, I don't think he would get the reps that would be good for him.
They let Trenton Flowers get guarded by Parker Jackson Cartwright. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, for a half of basketball.
For like a half, and then they're like, "Hey, you're not a point guard." And now completely different context. Like he was playing,
and that was after practices where like Trent Flowers getting guarded by Mitch McCarron, like another dude that'll like get in your shit, and like it was like, no, this isn't going well.
And again, completely different context because that's Flowers playing out of position and end up going to where the role he should be in. But it's like they're not going to have the patience for Bronny to figure it out if he's struggling. Where again, I don't know, like. This wasn't something we talked about ahead of time, but going to the A10 and just, go be the best player in the A10 playing point guard. To me, that's a heck of a resume. Again, I think Deron Holmes is going to go first round, completely different position, but he's the best player in the A10, dominated the league. And, that was in year 3. Bronny would be in year 2. And like you said, unless here's the caveat, Sam. If you don't think he needs to play point guard, then this probably isn't a good decision, right? If you think he is an off-ball guard who's going to space the floor and be a great defender, then this isn't a great idea. Go play at Ohio State or wherever. I
still think he needs on-ball reps in some respect.
I agree. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people are going to scream at us that he can just be he's an off-the-ball player and just go space the floor and defend.
Yeah, I think he still needs the reps on the ball. The final option here is like the NBA. Like he declared for the draft within this construct, right? Look, I don't think the NBA is a good idea for Bronny right now. If the goal here is to maximize his potential as a long-term NBA player, as we talked about, we think he needs on-ball reps. Maybe could get them in the G League. Like, look, teams do like experiments in the G League. They use it as a developmental ground. It's not impossible that like a team could just like hand the reins of their G League team over. But like the only way that's happening, I feel like, is if it's LeBron like on the team. And that kind of gets to the whole crux of this, right? If you're the Lakers and you want to keep LeBron happy, you want to get him to like sign another year extension, like whatever, right? Whatever your goal is here with this. Do you just use a second round pick on Bronny and say like, we'll buy a second round pick, we'll get in and we'll use the pick on Bronny and like, that's fine. Like we'll do it. They have 55 right now. I think that they could probably like get higher if they had to. I mean, hard.
I guess my short answer is yes. Like you're probably going to do what LeBron says. Because if it's at the risk of losing LeBron, if you don't do it and you're just going to piss him off and he's going to leave, then you do it. Because, I don't know their salary cap situation off the top. Like, I don't know how quickly they could get under the cap if LeBron left. Like, I don't know if they could clear their books off and restart. But is that really what you want to do? So, like,
look, like they could, but because like if LeBron's leaving, like you would think that results in like Anthony Davis leaving.
Okay. Yeah.
Like so, they trade AD and then, but like you can't, when's the next, I can't remember when they can move AD. Like I feel like he's trade restricted for a minute here still because he signed that longer extension. But like, look, like they can try and move Rui for an expiring. They can try and move Vincent and Vanderbilt for expirings. Like they are like kind of capped for a minute here unless they could move guys for expiring picks.
So I guess if you have the stomach for that, sure. Like, even me who hates this idea wouldn't do that over a second round pick at number 55, or I'll just go buy another. Like if I have somebody at 55, I want to draft because I really think I can put them on a 2-way or a standard contract and they can help our team. Then I'll just go buy another second round pick. Like I'll, whatever, or just scare every team into not drafting him and pick him up as an undrafted free agent. And you have 3.
Who would like test this though is Daryl Morey.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's gonna. I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? Like somebody's gonna pick him just because, again, just to
Like if you're a team with cap space, right, and LeBron has a player option for this offseason, like if you're Daryl, like you probably say, screw this, like we're gonna go for it, right, and like see what happens. Like I think that like you would know how Clutch is gonna feel if you do that, and how LeBron is gonna feel if you do that. But like if LeBron really wants to play for him,
yeah, or you screw
I'm
yourself with
intrigued.
every Clutch client for the rest of, like, you just never get another Clutch
Yeah,
guy.
but I don't think Daryl cares about that.
And maybe he shouldn't, but I just like this so much because it just turns into non-actual
That's
stuff.
the thing. That's the exact thing that's where we should finish on this,
Yeah.
right? A lot of this conversation is not basketball related.
Yeah.
It is mechanization. It's like trying to use the mechanics of basketball in order to, best, take advantage of these organizations in some way, or the organizations trying to take advantage of LeBron in some way. Like it's all a leverage game with a teenager at the center of it. And that's what's fucked up about it to me. Like, if we're talking purely about what Bronny James should do for the good of him becoming the best basketball player that he can be, it is go back to school, go to a place where he's comfortable. Like Duquesne sounds like a great idea. Few different things, right? Like you could find a way to do this. But to me, he should go back.
Yeah.
Like I think he should go to college again next year.
100%.
Okay. We are up now to a thing that I'm like pretty excited about here. I think it's going to be fun. We're up to offseason previews.
Yep.
And the first, I'll ask you, what offseason preview do you want to do first of these three?
We're going to do the Hornets because that's the first team on my outline. So I'm going to keep
You didn't share the outline with me today, Brian.
I did not, because I didn't think you needed it today, because I didn't have any notes or anything in there. And also I wanted to play the quiz game with the Boston Celtics thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's a fair question. Okay. So you want to do Charlotte Hornets first.
Let's do it. Yep.
Let's get the Hornets up here. Their long-term core moving forward, Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, the two main guys here, right?
Yep.
They have those guys under contract for an eternity, at least 5 years, if they want them. Mark Williams, big-time center prospect, drafted 15th. They seem pretty happy with him. 2 years, $10 million, then a restricted free agent, and they'll have to figure out a contract for him. Their big decisions kind of this summer are, what do we do with Miles Bridges? What other youth players do we feel like we want to build around those pivot points, right? Because you have one point guard, you have one wing, and you have one big. Who are the players around those teams, or around those players, that make the most sense for them as you try and build this core? You currently have a lottery pick that is projected at number 3 overall. So that will play a piece in this as well. You have potential for cap space that is like 12 to 15 million-ish, like something like that. They could be in, I don't know if they can be an over the cap team if they want to, actually. I think that they are like kind of beholden to whatever Bridges kind of decides to do in that way. What do you think the most important part of the Charlotte Hornets offseason is under new ownership, a new front office executive in Jeff Peterson, and a new organizational structure that they're operating within?
I think a lot of people are going to say what they do with Miles Bridges. Like, I don't even know. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm going to go with nailing the draft. I think they have to make another really good draft pick. And we've talked about this draft and, high upsides and blah, all of this different stuff, right? You can still get a good player. So there's going to be guys available that gives you another wing to go there with Brandon Miller. I think we took Reed Shepherd, or I took Reed Shepherd in our most recent mock to play in the backcourt with LaMelo Ball. If you don't keep Bridges around, then maybe that opens up some other things. So to me, the biggest thing is let's add another talented young player to this. And then they don't have the cap space to do what the Rockets did, but can you fill in a couple spots so you're a little more competitive next year, Sam? Can you fill in with some veterans, or if there are trades to be made, not superstars, not guys that need to take the ball away and shots away from LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, but I don't think they could afford Grayson Allen, but could you fit in Grayson Allen at the 2 next to, in between these guys just to space the floor while a youngster comes around, someone like that. So what veterans, a couple of veterans can you add to the roster that help them continue to grow, help you continue to find out what Brandon Miller is, what Mark Williams is, and then add another quality piece in this draft?
So to me, the most important piece, I agree with you. Where this starts to me is what you do with Bridges.
Yes. Because
so many of those players in that 2024 NBA draft, from Modest Bazelis, Ron Holland, Alex Sarr, Zach Rizashea, Steph Castle, Cody Williams, right? Depending on where you end up in the draft core or the draft order, right?
Yep.
So many of those guys could theoretically have some overlap with Miles Bridges in terms of your building of a core that is sustainable. So the first thing that they have to do is figure out what to do with Miles Bridges.
Yep.
If it's me, I've been very clear. I don't want Miles Bridges on my basketball team.
I'm with you.
I think that the whole situation is entirely gross. I do not think he should really be in the NBA. I am point blank about that. If you start to hear some of the comments out of Charlotte, for instance, Grant Williams recently just said that Miles Bridges is one of the best leaders in the locker room, right? Which that's a whole other conversation that feels concerning to me, but he has a voice there. Clutch is obviously going to try and figure out how to best handle the Miles Bridges situation for him. I really just don't think they should bring him back, but I think we have to operate this offseason preview under 2 constructs, one of which is they bring him back, one of which is that they don't. Let's start with the one where they don't. That's where it kind of opens up some semi-real space for them, where they can get to a fair amount of money, 15 million or so. Because you have to remember, I think they have 118 on the books right now for the guys they have. Cap is 141, but then you're also going to have a cap hold for the number 3 pick, which is going to be quite high. So, or wherever they pick, right? And that could be the difference of millions of dollars at the end of the day. If it's number 6 versus number 1, that's a huge, that's 4 or 5 million in cap space, right? So let's operate first they don't bring Bridges back. Actually, I'll ask this first. Does bringing Miles Bridges back, the fact that the decision ahead of time on draft night, does that impact what you do on draft night if you're planning to sign Miles Bridges to a long-term extension?
Yeah, I think it does a little bit. I'm probably a little less likely to go, not that you can't ever have too many wings, but if I have Brandon Miller for all of these years, assuming it's a long-term contract with Miles Bridges, then that might change. Do I want to go Rizashea or Matas Bazelis or Cody Williams, those guys? And I'm probably looking a little more inclined to go to a Reed Shepherd or somebody like that. I also if you're going to hitch your wagon to that guy, and I'm with you on this, Sam, but if we're just talking basketball on the court and what the Hornets could do, if they're going to hitch their wagon, I don't need another, I may not take another high upside guy. If I'm going to do that with Miles Bridges, and he better be really good on the court, and then Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. So I think in that world, I just take Reed Shepherd probably, because I think he just kind of slots in really nicely. Working in the world where Bridges is gone, which is the world I like to work in here, I might take a little bit more of a high upside swing there. Like I'm a little more like maybe I take Ron Holland in that scenario then because I want another guy that can really score and then Matas and all these other guys are definitely not stuck behind two starters long term.
So the other factor here is it's going to be a new coach, right? Steve Clifford has said he's stepping down. To me, if I'm the Hornets, I would like to get more of an offensive guy in there maybe than Clifford is. Obviously, you'd like a coach that can do both. But if I'm picking and choosing between offense and defense, I'm probably picking offense for this Hornets team if you're going to continue to build around LaMelo Ball. Because to me, you need to be able to really let him go and like be like an up-tempo point guard, be able to like grab and play on the break, right? I would like to facilitate like a very well-spaced, like really up-tempo scheme. And if I'm doing that, somebody like Ron Holland, I think makes a lot of sense. The other question I have for you is, we're thinking of Brandon Miller at 6'9" as like this big wing who can be a 3-4, right? Do we think that Brandon Miller can play the 2 and then you're open up like kind of across the board? Because Miller like plays a decent amount of the 2 for them as it is. So I kind of am asking that question because I don't know that it matters if Bridges is back on who, like what kind of player you take, because Miller, I think, is this player that, as you can see on the screen, can fire from 3, is really comfortable kind of handling the ball now, playing in ball screens. He'll continue to add to that as well. You have a playmaking point guard in LaMelo Ball as well. To me, like Reed Shepard would be amazing because he'd facilitate all of this like up-tempo scheme with his hit-ahead ability. And, he'd facilitate the shooting and spacing aspect, right? But like at the same token, if you have a guy that you think you can play as a 2 guard, you can then like go bigger at the 3 and the 4 and then have more like defensive versatility potentially as well around LaMelo, which is something you might need with LaMelo. So there are a lot of different ways they could go about this, I guess is kind of my point.
So like offensively, I think that's fine. Like I don't have any issues with that. Let's just say like you went LaMelo, Brandon Miller, let's say Matas and Grant Williams, right? Like you maybe you sign a 4-man or you just keep Grant Williams, you play him at the 4 because he has shot the ball better for the Hornets than he was. He's at 35%, I guess. But anyway, whoever it is, my thing with that is who's taking the primary perimeter defensive matchup, right? Like who is that guy? Does Brandon Miller do some of it? Maybe, but who's chasing Steph Curry around? Who's, those type of guys? That would be my worry or question in that scenario, I guess, is who's guarding those type of players in that lineup.
So long term, and this is the pick that I really like for them as well, is Steph Castle.
Yeah.
Like, I think Steph Castle would make a lot of sense for them as a guy who like just really understands space, can be able to move without the ball like in a real way, can play as like a secondary ball handler as well. If you want him that way, he can be your backup point guard, maybe long term. I don't think he's a starting point guard. Like, I don't think he can be like that dynamic of a playmaker, but like he might be able to hold some second units as a ball handler, right?
Yeah.
You get another secondary passer, which is something that Miller is still growing into as a player. I think Castle actually makes quite a bit of sense because then you also get that defensive aspect where you have a player who can really, really guard on the perimeter and make life easier for Miller and LaMelo on the defensive end.
I just think then the 4th guy in that lineup has to be a floor spacer. Like that dude has to be a knockdown floor spacer. Because I think long-term Castle may shoot. I don't know that he's ever a high volume guy. I know LaMelo can, I know Miller can, but you have Mark Williams at the 5. And so when you start with a center that doesn't space the floor in the way that Mark Williams doesn't, and he does all the other stuff really well, don't get me wrong, but you have him not spacing the floor. Castle's not going to space the floor, especially early in his career. The other 3 guys have to. So that would be my only thing with that. I'm cool with that. He's so good defensively. Whoever then is the other wing or whatever position it is, that has to be a floor spacer. And maybe you can give up a little bit of defense, right? Because Castle's so good. That guy has to space the floor, though.
I agree. I honestly would really love a situation, and this is where Castle like kind of gets thrown out, where like they could have like 4 spacers around Mark Williams and just like go, right? Like that'd be amazing. And that's, again, like another tick in the box of like Reed Shepherd for them is like a really fun player who could be a dynamic shooter and space the court for those guys. But I think there are like pros and cons to both kind of sides of that equation.
And that's why
another guy that like is really interesting for them, like if they decide to go with the, cap space angle and try to make it work that way, like DeAnthony Melton would really help.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like that.
Like if they could give DeAnthony Melton like $15 million a year, like if they can find a way to like get that space and give him like 15, and then he really likes to go and play up tempo, but can also guard on the ball in a real way. Like if you're looking at like a smaller guard who can play with LaMelo and, play in between him and Miller and knock down shots and be able to do things, like Melton has, made 36 from 3 this year, 39 the year before, 37 the year before, 41 the year before. Like DeAnthony Melton is like a real name for them that I think makes a lot of sense if he hits free agency.
Yeah, because they can't play in the Malik Monk, Grayson Allen range of free agents. Like they're just not going to get there money wise, unless I don't know if there's a mechanism to move. I don't think there's a mechanism to get there. Maybe there is. Maybe you'd have to trade or whatever it is. So no, I like that. And what you just said is another reason why I hesitate every time to pick Ron Holland to go there because of the floor spacing stuff and just some questions. Even though I like transitionally, like what getting out and running and all of that, like that would be a lot of fun with those guys. So
yeah, no, it's an interesting situation. Any other guys here that we want to talk about? Like the Vasilije Micic, run here has been really fun. Like he looks like a good backup point guard for them. Trey Mann, Nick Smith, any of those guys like kind of do anything for you?
Like I can't quit Nick Smith Jr. I was a fan of his coming out of high school. The injuries at Arkansas and it wasn't all great. And I know he has to fit, like, I wish he would take, like, I feel like he plays on a scale of 1 to 10 at 11. And I feel if he would just figure out to play an 8, he would be able to figure some things out. If nothing else, you have a few names there for your backcourt off the bench that, like, I would be okay if they come in next year and like, hey, let's try out Trey Mann for a little while. Let's, Nick Smith Jr., Micic, like let's try these guys out, see what happens. Nick Richards also, I think, has been like solid as a backup big, like not great, not spectacular, but what's his contract? It's very, very, like $5 million. I think that's a real quality contract for a guy that gives you some decent production as a backup big whenever he, Mark Williams is healthy.
Yeah. And like Grant Williams is like a solid, rotation player at the very least that will give them strong minutes, like professional minutes moving forward. Guy that can knock down corner threes, will be tough and physical, knows how to play at a high level, very vocal as well for a team that could probably use like a bit more of a vocal leader. Yeah, I like where the Hornets are heading right now, I think is what I would say. I'm a fan of where the Hornets are heading. Their big choice is just like, do we care about morals or not this summer? Like new ownership, you never know what that's going to look like. We don't really have a great feel for, how, Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin are going to feel about having Miles Bridges on this roster in a real way. This is the summer where I feel like they really get to make that call at a high level. And we'll find out what their thought process is, because in order to sign Miles, like you can't do the 1-year deal now. Like I think he will have offers for multi-years out there. Yeah, I would venture that will exist. So this is the year where the investment is going to have to come. Who is next on your sheet?
So
next, Bryce Simon.
We have the Brooklyn Nets.
The Brooklyn Nets are up. Okay, so the Brooklyn Nets offseason comes down to one very simple question. Are you star hunting or are you trying to like rebuild? Right? We know the answer to that question. They're star hunting. They're going to try and go get like a dude, right? In terms of what they have on the roster, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson feel like they're two guys that they're building around. 3 years and 2 years left on that deal. $48 million for 2 years for Mikal Bridges, 3 years, $68 million for Cam Johnson. They have Dorian Finney-Smith, another guy that can come in and be like a useful player on a team that has a star. Ben Simmons is now on an expiring contract, which makes it easier for you to be able to move him to facilitate a star trade. The big question is just who you chasing.
I don't know.
I think there's no team in the league that is hoping that the Cavs bomb out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
the Brooklyn Nets.
They have to be praying for that, right? That's lose in the first round, and at the end of the day, it has to be. This team has to get an on-ball primary creator, initiator, however you want to say it. Like, I don't even want to call it a point guard. They have to get somebody that can pressure the defense with the ball in his hands. That has to be priority one. And if you can get a big name, great. If not, you still have to get somebody that does it to an extent to make this thing a little bit more workable next season. But yeah, I wouldn't be going for anything else other than that. So if it's Donovan Mitchell, I don't know. I guess I can't think of any other names off the top of my head of the competitors that
I mean, like DeJounte Murray.
We've talked about Murray.
If you want to call him that, there are names that you can look at, and this team has real draft capital from having moved Kyrie and Kevin Durant, even though they don't have their own draft capital. That is currently with the Houston Rockets. Look, there are teams that could bomb out of the playoffs, right? We don't know what Milwaukee will look like if they lose in the first round, right? Something crazy could happen there. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying possibilities exist for these things, right? Jimmy Butler probably will want an extension coming up here, right? If Miami somehow bombs out of the playoffs and they're we don't know what the future of this team is. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows what that looks like? And again, I'm not saying that Jimmy Butler is going to demand a trade and do all this stuff, but the point is that these possibilities, you don't find them out really until they happen and until the playoffs really tell us everything that we're going to need to know about the situation. So with Brooklyn, it's hard to do an offseason preview for them until we know who's actually available. I just don't, where I want to take this is this. If you were Brooklyn, would you be so set on star hunting? Do you think it's actually a worthwhile endeavor for them with Bridges, Johnson, Finney-Smith? You re-sign Nick Claxton, maybe we'll talk about that in a second, and hope that your vets make it work.
I mean, I still feel like they're a little bit I'm still not sure. So what? Donovan Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, Claxton, Cam. I'm still not sure where that roster gets me. I'm still not sure how high, even in the Eastern Conference, that roster gets me. I know they don't.
So you jump Cleveland automatically. Let's say it's Mitchell, right? You jump Cleveland because you're taking Mitchell and putting him on your team, right? Is a team with Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton better than Orlando, what they will be next season after a year of growth from Paulo Franz and Jalen Suggs?
I would say my gut says yes, but that's with not knowing what Orlando would do this summer. I think Orlando would need more than internal growth.
I'm not really even sure that they would,
to
be honest. Is that team better than a healthy operational Knicks team?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Is that team better than a Pacers with Halliburton and Siakam and then Rick Carlisle and they have actual chemistry as opposed to doing it in season?
Probably not.
Is that team better than the Miami? Does that team have a better chance to win a playoff series than the Miami Heat?
I love how we talk about the Miami Heat. This is such a credit to Spo and the Heat culture and I was watching that game against the Sixers, like, man, Haywood Highsmith is good. Like, it's just like it's always somebody. But like they win more games than them in the regular season. I'd feel pretty confident about saying that.
Yeah. And then like you start to really go down, like the 76ers with Joel Embiid, if Joel's healthy, like they don't win more games than that team.
No.
Do any of these teams in the East take a jump? Like probably not beyond that. But like you're talking about best case scenario, probably like a 4 seed, right?
So here's what I always like to like. I don't always have the foresight for this. So I guess my question is, how else do you build it out then, right? Because whatever you take the assets you have to go get Donovan Mitchell. Okay, now you have what we're talking about. If somebody could show me, okay, this is the first move, but then here's the second move. Like here's the next thing that's going to happen where we're going to put a second star next to these guys. Bridges is actually going to end up being the best third option, third guy in the NBA. And we have Donovan and this other dude. Now I'm super intrigued. Now I'm like, let's do it. If you can show me that plan and the path to that, cool. Let's do it. I'm all in. I don't know that I'm up for Donovan Mitchell. Mikal's the second option. Cam's still playing a bigger role than what I think he needs to be, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so next question here. If star hunting this summer fails, at what point do you feel like you have to bail because Mikal Bridges has 2 years left on his contract? And the whole thing here is that we're building around Mikal Bridges as the second or third star whenever he has this bargain basement contract for what he is.
Insane contract. Yeah. I mean, so if you strike out, is that the time to do it? Like, do you go and go ahead and make that move? I'm not sure what my appetite is. Like we've talked about Josh Giddey to the Nets, right? Like if the Thunder thing doesn't work out, and again, like he's been shooting the ball well for them, like is it Josh Giddey? And that's obviously not Donovan Mitchell or DeJounte Murray, but maybe a guy that can play with the ball in his hands and pressure the defense and break it down and, have insane versatility with the size you have there. But again, like that doesn't like solve the problem long-term. Like that doesn't, like you're in the play-in game with that roster. So is that even worth it? Like, it sounds crazy to go from, hey, it's either DeJounte Murray, Donovan Mitchell, etc., or we just go full rebuild. But to me, that's kind of the way it feels. You can't go back next season with the same roster, Sam. Like, I don't think. That seems crazy to me.
But what if you miss on everybody? Like you might miss on everybody because you don't have the best deal for you don't have the most assets to be able to make a trade.
You're just going to waste another
deal, but that's the thing. That's why, to me, their move is to move Mikal Bridges, but it's almost not worth talking about that right now because they've been so steadfast against it at this point. Like, I don't know about like the Rockets offer. I've heard like the Jalen Green idea and everything. I don't even know. Like, I don't know how much of that's true, not true. I find it a little bit difficult to believe that the Rockets put like multiple of those Nets picks on the table for Mikal Bridges, given how valuable those Nets picks project to be long-term. But like, it's hard for me to look at this any other way than like Memphis would move a lot for Mikal Bridges, I feel like.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
That'd be amazing, right? Like a team that needs a wing that can like be a stopper, create shots different ways. Like they probably give up a lot for Mikal Bridges, right?
Oh my, that would be so fun. Yeah, that would be.
Oklahoma City, like that's a team that could be really fun for Mikal Bridges. Just look all throughout the league. Like every team could use him. Every team can afford him because his contract's pretty cheap. Like, God, like, can you imagine like Milwaukee, like finding spare change in the couch to be able to do this? They don't have the assets, but like,
no, they do not.
Yeah. Like there are ways that you could find to do this. Like the Knicks, if you're going cross town, they would present an offer.
Go put him on the Sixers and you have Maxey, Bridges, and Embiid. Like that would be a lot of
fun.
Kidding
me? That'd be great. So I look at all this and I just think that that's the move for them to make is to move Mikal and restart. It's really hard to restart when you don't have your own picks. I get why they would be hesitant to do that. But man, it just feels like they're going nowhere if they miss on a star this summer, which is why they really have to connect with somebody.
Well, and the thing is, and you brought this up, I just want to reiterate it. Mikal's trade value is only going to decrease. And I'm not saying it's going to decrease a lot, but eventually a team, if you holding on to him for another year, and then now he's an expiring, and I know he's not actually an expiring, but that other team is going to go like, hey, we have to negotiate this new contract with him where it's no longer one of the best valued contracts in the NBA. Like, it's just not as valuable. Right now, if you did it this offseason, a team's going to go, hey, we get 2 years of the best third option in the NBA on an insane value. Yeah, it's worth giving up real assets for that.
And they would have serious draft capital at that point. They would be able to do a lot of different things, in my opinion. The next questions here are, look, Cam Thomas is doing it again. It's March. So Cam Thomas is averaging 26.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists while shooting 46, 36, 87. We don't really care about these Cam Thomas buckets, right?
I mean, the best thing about it, Cam Thomas is the leading scorer on the Brooklyn Nets this year. I mean, the thing is, they actually kind of need it because of all the stuff we've talked about. And I realize they're still not any good, but it actually makes sense on this team because they need what he does to function properly, because these other guys, quite frankly, Sam, they're not this. These highlights you're playing right now, these other guys aren't this. And so, good for him. Go take advantage of the opportunity and go get buckets.
Yeah. I still don't really think a team can win with Cam Thomas as like a primary option. He's not good enough defensively, not good enough as a passer. Just a lot of reasons why I think that'd be a problem. Nick Claxton is the other big kind of decision here, in my opinion, where, okay, so like, let's say we get a star. Nick Claxton makes a lot more sense next to a star. Let's say we don't. We're the Nets, we end up with like Nick Claxton on like a 5-year, $120 million deal, whatever it's going to be, for 100. I'm just like spitballing numbers here, right? At some level, but like, say that that's what it is. What do you do?
I would be uncomfortable letting him just leave for nothing.
I think you can't let him leave for nothing. I agree with you.
My hope would be you get him on a quality contract where if you end up selling on Bridges and missing out on all this stuff, one, he's not a bad player to have around either way. But he's on a contract that you can move if you need to, if you need to do that as well. So that I don't think you just let Nick Claxton walk.
I think you also don't let Nick Claxton walk. I think if you can re-sign him, you do it. But Nick Claxton is an unrestricted free agent, and you don't have control over this, right? You don't know how this is going to go. You don't know what direction this is going to end up. Last year, the Ben Simmons deal, is that tradable? Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously, very tradable contract, 2 years, $30 million. Look, at the end of the day, like what I would do and what the Nets are going to do is just so drastically different that it's almost like worth kind of moving forward and not continuing to talk about this. I would move Bridges. I would move Finney-Smith. I would, take my lumps here, try to build up Cam Thomas's trade value, move him, and go from there. Like that's where I'm at on them. But they're going to do something different. They're going to try and get Donovan Mitchell or someone like that.
Yep.
Okay. Last team, the Toronto Raptors.
I thought we were doing the Chicago Bulls, Sam.
We're not doing the Chicago Bulls. We're not doing the Chicago Bulls, Bryce. The Toronto Raptors offseason preview here. Look, their long-term core to me is like pretty clear. It's Scotty Barnes, extension eligible this summer. We've got RJ Barrett, who has this 3-year, $83 million deal. He's been pretty good for them since he's been there. And Emmanuel Quickley, who's a restricted free agent this summer, who they're going to have to pay because they gave up OG Anunoby for him. They also have Jakob Poeltl on this 3-year long-term deal. They've got Bruce Brown with his $23 million team option. Gary Trent is an unrestricted free agent. Jordan Nwora has had a couple of fun games here and there. Grady Dick and Ochai Agbaji are kind of the guys I think they're hoping can kind of blend within the Barnes, Barrett, and Quickley core and work within that construct. The big question for the Raptors right now is, do you keep the draft pick? because their pick is top 6 protected this year. They are currently at number 6 in the draft order. That makes things incredibly convoluted and difficult for them, because there is a 29.8% chance that pick falls to 7 currently. There's a 20.5% chance that pick falls to 8, and then a 4% chance that it falls outside of the top 8. So basically, it's slightly better than a 50-50 chance that they don't keep the pick, even though currently they are in line to keep the pick. Would you want to keep the pick in this year's draft, Bryce? Because it has to go at some point.
It has to go at some point. It's top 6 protected every year. Is that right?
I think it goes down next year. I can look that up while we're talking.
It's top. No, it's top 6.
Is it?
It's top 6. So you're not. Yeah, I guess, because so it's the difference, like getting number 5 or 6 this year compared to 10 to 14 next year.
So that's the question, right? Are they good enough to where if the pick does not transfer this year by getting, full season from Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and then Pirtle and all those guys, to where they're not right back in this situation next year in a better draft?
Yeah. Maybe I'd rather just go ahead and convey, and then it's a win-win, right? Like if you go and you're really good next year and Scotty takes the jump and Quickly's what they want him to be and all of that, you feel okay about picking 15. And if you stink, at least you have a top 5 pick in what should be a really good draft, I guess. I mean, win-win was a little strong, but I guess I wanted to convey, I guess.
I think that I go back and forth on it, because part of this is like timeline specific as well. Because if you're Toronto and you're about to sign Scotty to this mega deal where you have 6 years of Scotty Barnes, right? That's the idea. You probably want the player that you take in your system earlier than later
To start building it.
But like you could also just take an older player like the next year or something. Ultimately, I go back and forth on this in a real way, because like they're very clearly building a timeline of all these guys that are somewhere between 22 and 25 years old, right? Barnes, Barrett, Quickly, they're trying to like all peak like at the right time where they could eventually win a title, I think is the hope. A lot of that rests on Scotty Barnes being able to be the best player on a title team. I'm skeptical. I think Scotty is an all-star level player, but like, I don't know if he can be a number 1 on a title team at this point. That standard is just crazy, crazy high.
Yeah.
I think my take is that I would probably prefer it to convey this year, but the reason for that is that I would want all of my future picks for potential moves.
Yeah.
And like open up trade flexibility as opposed to having to work around like the future pick construction.
It does get very annoying when you have to play with that. Like, the Pistons have one that's tied up stupid crazy, and it just convolutes every single thing. Here's the other thing. You do have a pick that's going to land in the middle of the first round. I'm not saying the value at 16, 17, whatever is the same as the top 6. I'm not saying that. And then you also have pick 31. So you have 2 other picks that theoretically, guys, you're going to be able to select that you want on your roster. So now I'm at least spacing that out a little bit as well, Sam. I'm going to bring in 2 guys this year still. And then next year, instead of having nobody, because I believe Spotrac has cost me a couple times on this, but according to them, they wouldn't have either pick next year if it conveys next year, and their second round is going out. So then you go into 2025 with nothing. So I think the more I look at it, I'll take my mid first round pick and top of the second. And I don't know, maybe that could move you up somewhere. I don't know what the value of that would be. Like maybe I could do something if I wanted to get into the back end of the lottery. And I would rather take those two and then know that I have my first round the next year. And like you said, the trade aspect, flexibility moving forward.
I think that's right. I've really gone back and forth on it to where like I've thought about it a lot. I think I would prefer it to convey. The next question here is, look, the first thing they have to do is like they have to get the Scotty Barnes extension done, right? Like Scotty Barnes's extension, the numbers are going to be like pretty, substantial, right? I believe that like if he was to make All NBA next year, it's like 280 or something like that. Like it's like a crazy, crazy number. I forget what it is, if it's like 25% of what the cap is going to be in a couple of years, because we're still working off of projections at this point. But you need to get that extension done. And given that he's made an all-star game, it's going to have it's going to have like super max language. You hope that you don't get a player option in there, but the Raptors have given away player options throughout the course of the career. Bruce Brown or Emmanuel Quickley is the next one before we get to Bruce. What do you think an Emmanuel Quickley contract looks like?
Whatever he wants. Like, here's the thing. The Raptors, like they don't have a choice, right? Like you have to max Scotty because you traded Siakam. Like you said, you traded OG for IQ. So you have to kind of give him what he wants. What's he going to get? Between 25 and 30 a year?
That was my assumption. Yeah. So Tyler Hero and Jordan Poole both got 30, and Emmanuel Quickley is certainly better than Jordan Poole.
Cap's going.
Tyler
up.
Hero, I'll hear out cases one way or another. I'd probably rather have Quickley, but like I'll hear it out one way or another. I think that the number is probably going to be right around like 30.
Yeah. I think I was on the low end probably. Yeah.
So is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Those are kind of the questions I have on it. Is he going to be somebody that tries to get a player option on that fourth year? You max it out, you get the player option. Can you get like, maybe you do like 140 with a team option or something like that on the back end, where like maybe you do a declining scale contract of like, hey, we're going to pay you more of your money up front, but if we want to decline this team option at the end of the day, we want to be able to have that flexibility. And then that number would still be extendable at a real level because the number is so high as it is anyway.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's the structure I would hope for. I'd maybe like try and go a little bit higher on the number, have a descending scale, and then have him like a team option if I could. He might just get like a very large number from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like if you're the Pistons, like you probably try and go for him. Point,
throw the bag at him and see what happens. And if he goes back to Toronto, at least you made them overpay, quote unquote. Yeah, I mean, you're speaking right to my heart with the descending contract and team options. Like, I mean, I don't know how easy it is to get those on contracts, but every time I every time I see a descending contract, from a front office perspective, I love it. Like I love those, especially when the cap is going the opposite direction. You just know they're going to look better and better and better every single year. So yeah, I mean, like I say, we have seen restricted free agencies play out funny, right? And so that will be an interesting aspect of this for him. Do they get a deal done? Do you say, hey, go see what somebody will give you and then just know that you're going to match it? That was the Andre Ayton thing that the Suns, but obviously that
you can't do that if you're the Raptors because you moved Anunoby for him. I think that I would bet you that there's a deal done like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like realize what I just did there, but
No pun intended.
yeah, I would imagine they get a deal done pretty early on in free agency, and the number is right around the Poole hero level. The funnier one that we haven't talked about, I was talking about this with someone today. What do we think Jalen Suggs gets? Because Suggs has had a better year this year than like any of those guys in terms of like impacting winning when they ended up signing their deals. Like, does he get like 35?
Oh man, I wasn't going to go that high.
32, like something like that.
I got to adjust my mindset because I wanted to keep him in the same range. I got to look at the salary cap stuff a little more and the percentages. And I need to look at like the Nuggets. I need somebody to do the numbers of like the average percent of cap for number 1 options, number 2 options, number 3 options, first guy off the bench, stuff like that. Like if those numbers are out there, somebody tweet at me, send me a DM on Twitter, email me, whatever, because that's what I want to start working off of is what is the average percent of the cap for a number 1 option in the NBA? But I kind of know, we know those things. What is the average percent of the cap for a number 3 option in the NBA or a 5th starter or 8th guy? Those are the things I want to know because I think that's the perspective that would help us all navigate these, or somebody like me who's not quite as into the cap stuff as deep. So,
yeah. Next question for the Raptors is, what do they do with this Bruce Brown deal? They have a $23 million team option on it. They decided to keep him at the deadline, which was a choice. You do have real flexibility. You could decline the team option, or like, I think they should probably just pick it up.
I'd say you probably exercise it, right? Like what's
I think
the salary cap
like
situation?
exercise and like trade him
at
the end of the day. Yeah.
Because if they turn it down, are they like, where are they at with cap space? I mean,
I don't believe they project to have cap space.
Yeah. So I just don't see, I guess I don't see why you don't just go ahead and exercise it. Somebody's taking on Bruce Brown as an expiring contract, even at that number, I feel like.
Yeah. I would think that somebody takes on that number for Bruce Brown pretty happily and gives up a pick. Like I would say somebody will give up like a player and a pick for Bruce Brown to match the salary and go from there.
Yeah.
Because Bruce Brown's a good player. He's a valuable basketball player at the end of the day.
Yep.
The question to me is, do you keep him? Like, do you think it's a good fit with Quickly and Barnes? Like, do you think that, RJ Barrett works with him? My answer to that is no. Given that, you have Barnes and Barrett, both of whom are going to be trying to drive into the lane, you'd really need to trust Bruce Brown to be like a super high level floor spacer that gets a ton of respect from like defenders as a shooter, I think.
Yeah, especially with Jakob on the floor. I mean, I guess if KO's out there who they, gave the extension to, maybe it makes a little more sense because now he's your only non-shooter that doesn't have the ball in his hands, right? Like Scotty, we know, but like the ball's going to be in his hands. So you space around him at 3 other positions. And now Bruce Brown's just like can play that connector role. And I know he shot the ball better. Like, he credit to him for improving throughout his career, but yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how much they're like really going for it, trying to win, like what they think they can actually be in terms of like a contender, like, which I don't think at all. Are you super like, hey, we got to go be the 6th seed next year? Then like, sure. But like you said, I think if you can get a real asset for him, you just do that. Unless like there's some salary matching and some bigger deal that I don't foresee them going after right now as well.
I think you just like space. I think you move him, you exercise and move for him. Like you trade him. Yep. That's kind of where I'm at on it. That's, I think, all I've got on the Raptors. There's not like, I think this is a year of like, even next year is probably going to be like a year of stasis for them. Maybe Scotty lifts them into the play-in picture. Like, I think that would be their hope. Like, we battle for the 6th seed, the 5 seed, something like that. Scotty like lifts us in that way, but we leapfrog the Nets, we leapfrog the Bulls certainly, and the Hawks maybe, and we try to get into that like 6, 7, 8 range and hope that maybe one of the teams above there, like kind of, or in that group, kind of falls off.
Yeah.
And then we're like kind of battling at the end of the day. So it feels like a stasis year where they're trying to like figure out what the core is around Scotty and then build off of that.
I was going to call it a proof of concept. Maybe that's not the right term, but like, just, is this going to work? And I don't mean it has to work at the highest possible level to be what you want. Like, it's not the end game. Can Scotty be this guy? Is IQ going to be what I think we cautiously believe he could be in this role? Is RJ going to be this dude, playing up in Canada and all of that stuff, like you brought up Grady and we kind of glossed over it, but Grady and Ochai, like what are they able to do, if anything, those type of things. So it's just a little bit of, let's figure this out. What is it? Okay, now we have our answer. It got us into the play-in, and maybe we lose in the first round to the 1 seed. Great. Now we know what we need to build out around that. Yeah.
I think it's a good question, but like, I don't think there's any certainty they get there either.
I don't think so either. Yeah. I mean, I think we both have question marks about this being around Scotty, and that's no like knock on Scotty, but being the number one guy, I know I have concerns. I shouldn't put words in your mouth. I have concerns about that being his ultimate role.
Yeah, like my thing is, what if Brandon Miller takes a leap this summer? And then you have healthy LaMelo, Brandon takes a leap, then the Hornets are ahead of this team.
Yeah.
Right? So like they're in a precarious position right now, the Raptors.
And they're about to get
some things
with some big time money on the books too.
Yes, they're in a precarious position with a lot of big long-term money.
That's a
great point.
Long-term money.
That's a very, very good point. Okay, Bryce. That's all we've got, man. We're done.
Yeah, you need to go like enjoy life, Sam. Like
I was supposed to be at a thing like an hour ago.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go hang out with my family, who I love very much, and we're gonna watch basketball. And the Pistons are about to play in 3 minutes, so that'll ruin my night. But there's women's basketball on tonight that I'll have in the background. That'll be awesome, and we're gonna have a nice chill weekend here. So you go enjoy your time out there with all those basketball people. I'm jealous, and I'm gonna love up my family here for a few hours.
The problem is like I have like a couple hours here where I can go out. Like I have to like come back and work. Like I have to do transfers. I have top 25 for next season. CJ Moore and I are working on. I have like draft stuff to work. Like it's just like it never ends at this point for me right now. So I am looking forward to getting out of the house here momentarily to go see some friends, and then after that we'll figure out the rest of it. But Bryce, this has been fun. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, do everything you can to support the show. We will be back on Sunday or Monday. Not sure which one yet. I fly to Portland on Sunday, so it will depend kind of on like timing on Bryce and I's end, and like when I get into my hotel, all that stuff. So really looking forward to that. But until next time, we'll talk soon.